In 2012, a beachcomber in Canada came across an old Harley-Davidson that washed ashore. Turns out the bike was lost in the 2011 Japanese tsunami and managed to float all the way across the Pacific. Author Lois Duncan wrote many popular crime and suspense novels throughout the 70s and 80s, but she essentially stopped writing completely when her own daughter became the victim of an unsolved murder in 1989. In 2020, a fan drove 3 hours to deliver a much-needed dose of insulin to rapper Boozy Badass. She refused to accept any payment other than a photo with him. But on her way home, she stopped at a gas station, bought a scratch-off ticket, and won 10 grand. In 2004, grandmother Dorothy Fletcher suddenly suffered a heart attack on her flight to Florida. When the stewardess asked if there was a doctor on board, 15 people stood up. They were on their way to a cardiology conference. In the only novel that Edgar Allan Poe ever wrote, 4 crewmen get lost at sea and end up eating the cabin boy named Richard Parker. In real life, 46 years later, an English yacht sank and the remaining 4 crewmen resorted to eating the cabin boy to survive. That boy's name was Richard Parker. A Bosnian couple began cheating on each other when they both started talking to another person online. When both groups decided to meet in person, the couple realized they'd been cheating on each other with each other. A family photo under the northern lights became a 1 in a million shot when they also captured a shooting star in the background. Ancient ruler Mithridates was so paranoid of being poisoned that he routinely drank toxins throughout his life to build up his immunity. When he was finally captured by the Romans, he tried to kill himself with poison but failed because he was completely immune. In 1987, a British woman purchased a ring from a flea market for $5, thinking it was simply a nice-looking artificial stone. But 33 years later, she discovered that it was actually a genuine 26-carat diamond ring worth $960,000. During the Crimean War over 160 years ago, a French and Russian soldier fired at each other and their bullets miraculously collided. The series Breaking Bad has 62 episodes in total. The 62nd element on the periodic table is samarium, a substance typically used to treat lung cancer. One of the most renowned vasectomy doctors in all of Texas is named Dr. Dick Chop. Packers fan Jim Becker regularly donated blood in order to afford tickets for games. Years later, he found out that he had a potentially deadly disease that could only be prevented through giving blood. So without even knowing it, he was saving his own life by donating blood the entire time. In 2016, brothers Bob and James Stockless both won the lottery on the same day with randomized numbers. But one was way happier than the other since Bob won $7 while his brother James took home over $290 million. In 1950, a Nebraska church exploded 5 minutes after choir practice was supposed to start. But miraculously, all 15 members of the choir were late that day for different reasons, and not a single person was hurt. When actor-comedian Red Fox was dying of a heart attack while on set, nobody offered to help him. This was because everyone thought it was nothing more than the fake heart attack act he was famous for. A Chinese woman attending her son's wedding was quickly sent to tears when she noticed a birthmark on the bride's hand. Turns out the bride was her long-lost daughter, whom she'd been trying to find for over 20 years. In 2016, Glenda Blackwell bought a $10 scratch-off ticket to prove to her gambling husband that they were a total waste of money. Fortunately, she failed to prove her point since the ticket ended up being a $1 million jackpot winner. In 2017, a group of undercover cops in Detroit who were posing as drug dealers tried to arrest another group of undercover cops who were posing as drug buyers. In 2001, Jason and Jenny Cairns Lawrence went on vacation in New York City when the World Trade Center was struck on 9/11. 4 years later, in 2005, they went on vacation in London when 4 bombers attacked the London bus network, killing 52 people. Then in 2008, they were in Mumbai when once again the city was attacked by 10 terrorists who killed nearly 200 people. All 3 tragedies were the worst terrorist attacks in history for each country. And now Jason and Jenny just stay home. A couple from the UK was renovating their 300-year-old home in 2019 when they discovered something amazing under their kitchen floor. It was a cup filled with 264 rare coins, some dating back as early as 1610. The collection's expected to sell for around $300K at auction next month. In Hocus Pocus, Sarah Jessica Parker played a witch who was executed during the Salem witch trials. Years later, the actress found out that her 10th great-grandmother was actually accused of witchcraft in Salem 1692. Sodium nitrate is the secret ingredient that will turn any cheese into a creamy nacho cheese sauce. By pure coincidence, sodium nitrate's chemical formula spells out the word nacho. The Secret Service agent who saved Ronald Reagan's life was inspired to become an agent after watching The Secret Service, a 1939 film starring Ronald Reagan as a Secret Service agent. While filming for Blade Trinity, Jessica Biel was instructed to shoot an arrow directly at the camera that was more than 60 feet away. It was protected by plexiglass except for a 2x2-inch square in front of the lens, which Biel managed to hit with a direct bullseye, thus destroying the $300,000 camera. Just hours after the death of Nintendo CEO Satoru Iwata, a rainbow appeared over the Nintendo headquarters. Fans dubbed it the Rainbow Road to Heaven. In the year 1506, a 1,000-year-old statue was discovered in Rome, but it was missing an arm, so the Pope set up a contest to see who could come up with the best recreation of the missing arm. Michelangelo's version lost, but 400 years later the original arm was found and had been sculpted in the exact same position that Michelangelo designed. In the 1990s, FBI agent Robert Hansen was assigned the task of finding a double agent within the FBI. It was later discovered that Hansen was the mole they were looking for and had been working with the KGB since 1979, in what was quite possibly the worst intelligence disaster in U.S. history. He's now serving out 15 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Oscar the Cat served on 3 World War II battleships, 1 German and 2 British. All 3 ships were sunken during battles, but the Cat miraculously survived each time by floating on wooden planks. He was later nicknamed Unsinkable Sam. Former NFL player Dellan McCullough was adopted in 1973 and reunited with his birth mother in 2017. She then revealed the name of his father, who turned out to be his coach and mentor throughout his life without either of them having any idea they were related. While filming the final scene of the movie Kingpin, where Bill Murray's character bowls 3 strikes in a row, Bill Murray actually did bowl 3 strikes in a row. His celebration along with the crowd's roaring applause were both genuine reactions. An adopted man from Michigan had been searching for his birth mother for 4 years before finding out she'd been working at the same Lowe's as him the entire time. Founder of the Ferrari company, Enzo Ferrari, died on August 14, 1988. Just 1 month later, on October 15th, Arsenal football player Mesut Ozil was born. Someone took this pic of an albino peacock at the exact time that it flew over a regular one, making it look like its spirit was exiting its body. Famous Austrian composer Arnold Schoenberg had extreme triskaidekaphobia, the fear of the number 13. He ended up dying on Friday the 13th at the age of 76. In 1969, an astrologer warned John Lennon that he would be shot on an island. John was so disturbed by this that it caused him to cancel an upcoming yacht trip around the Greek islands. 11 years later, John Lennon was shot and killed on the island of Manhattan. These natural ice formations in Antarctica look like structures built by the ancient Romans. This 3,000-year-old clay pig was found 2 years ago at the Lian ruins of China. Internet users immediately pointed out that it looked oddly similar to the pigs from Angry Birds. An LA couple was ecstatic to see the first ultrasound of their baby until they realized that he looked exactly like Donald Trump. The shadow of this sign in Devon, England closely resembles a person being hanged. Coincidentally, it's located near a spot called Dead Man's Cross, where criminals were hanged from a gallows in the 13th century. In 1991, retired truck driver Terry Horton found a painting at a California thrift shop that she purchased for $5. She thought it was hideous and planned on throwing darts at it until one of her friends suggested getting it checked out. It ended up being a priceless painting by Jackson Pollock worth right around $50 million. In 2015, a man swimming near Huntington Beach, California was suddenly struck in the back by a great white. After making it ashore and going to the hospital, doctors assured him that he'd be fine. But upon seeing his x-rays, they realized he had a cancerous tumor that they were just barely able to remove in time. In 1923, a young jockey named Frank Hayes suffered a heart attack and suddenly died in the middle of a horse race. But his body remained on the saddle throughout the race, and his horse Sweet Kiss crossed the finish line first. This was the first time that Hayes had ever won a race, and the last. In 1913, a 12-year-old black girl named Sarah Rector was given land deemed unsuitable for farming. But it turned out to be rich with oil, and she became a millionaire overnight. She was known as the richest colored girl in the world, and Oklahoma legislation even made an effort to have her legally declared white. An electric company in Arkansas was forced to post this PSA after someone took out a power line with an unbelievable arrow shot. Mario Puzo, the author of the Godfather books who also adapted them to film, had no idea what he was doing since he'd never written the script before. After winning 2 Oscars, he decided to buy a book on screenwriting to learn how to improve. In the very first chapter, it said to study the first Godfather film. In 1989, a Philadelphia man purchased a $4 painting at a flea market only because he liked the frame. So he removed the painting when he returned home and was stunned to find an old document hidden behind it. 2 years later, he finally decided to get it checked out, and it ended up being one of the original 24 copies of the Declaration of Independence. He later sold it at auction for $2.4 million. Someone found this shell at the beach with barnacles on it resembling an anatomically correct heart. The man who found the 5,000-year-old mummy Utsi the Iceman would also end up being found dead frozen in ice 13 years later. In Bermuda, 1974, 17-year-old Erskine Eben was struck and killed by a taxi driver while riding his moped. Almost exactly a year later, his twin brother Neville was riding that same moped when he was struck and killed by the same taxi driver carrying the same passenger on the same street. In 2009, a retired policeman named Geraint Wolford was admitted to Abergele Hospital in North Wales. Amazingly, it just so happened that he was put next to another retired policeman named Geraint Wolford. The men weren't related, had never met, and were the only 2 people in Europe named Geraint Wolford.